All right, joining us this morning to talk all things campaign 2012, our political analyst, John Dadian. And good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
like
that.
we should say it to everyone that's with us this morning.
You know, it's
nice.
a universal statement.
I didn't even know it was Mother's Day. The only day I knew it's 22 days before the election.
Yeah, that's the way this guy's mind thinks.
It's a holiday. Let's talk about the gay marriage issue and where that puts the candidates and the implications.
What the recent events are really interesting, because clearly what we're finding out now, it absolutely wasn't the intention of the White House to unveil this position this early. It was another famous Biden. I mean, they're admitting that now. So I think that's very interesting. Here's what I'm really looking at. People are very passionate about this issue. What's really happening is the fundraising aspect. But interestingly, on both sides, the Democrats in the Obama campaign got millions of dollars within 90 minutes of that announcement coming out. So people really resonated with that. But now the Republicans are using it and cementing their base, and those dollars are flowing.
Okay. One thing we want to talk about this morning, this is kind of, we haven't talked about the Tea Party in a long time, and we're going to talk about Indiana here. This last week, six-term Republican Senator Richard Lugar lost by a landslide to State Treasurer Richard Murdoch, who was supported by the Tea Party. What does that say about the Tea Party? They've been pretty quiet for a while and really had some impact in this race.
Huge impact, and again, I keep talking about fundraising. There's another example of almost $5 million came into that race, and mostly on the Tea Party candidate side. It's pretty interesting. What we really want to look at is, does that affect other parts of the country? Does that affect Sandiego? It really doesn't. So the Tea Party, what they've done is they've had hit and misses. They've had some of the candidates, as we've seen in Nevada, that they weren't good candidates. But when they get a good candidate, it does make a difference. So I think conservatives really need to pay attention to these results.
Yeah, and something else to pay attention to in this is Senator Lugar was known for, he was really open to both sides of the aisle. Does that say something about the type of candidates maybe Tea Party and conservative voters want in office right now? Again,
it depends on certain geographical parts of the country. Indiana, it clearly does. I don't think it resonates here because, again, in our local mayor's race, the new independent candidate, his big mantra is, I agree with Democrats, sometimes Republicans, sometimes oppose them. In Indiana, they did not like that Lugar played both sides.
Okay.
Interesting, the polls in Indiana showed that if Lugar would have gotten the nomination, he would have won easily in November. Now with the Tea Party candidate easily winning the nomination, they say it's going to be neck and neck between that and the Democratic nominee.
Let's go to the local mayor's race, and if you go to your mailbox, you're seeing flyers and brochures and
or your television.
Yeah, or your television. You see the bombardment has begun.
It really has.
We have a precedent, though, in Sandiego of a legal precedent of maybe attacks going too far, and certain candidates need to be careful, don't they, of what they say and what they can get away with?
It is a little bit more latitude, or as Jimmy Buffett say, latitude and attitude than your normal legal restrictions, but it still applies. For example, there was a case in the 80s when Susan Golding, who of course went on to supervisor and then mayor offices, but there was a case where her opponent sued both her and the political consultant. Now, they settled out of court, so both sides kind of claimed victory, but clearly action was filed in that case and there was a settlement.
Do the candidates care? And that's a legitimate question. Do they care because they'll say and do anything to get into that office right now?
And that's right, because unfortunately, it's a great question, Jeff, because once you're in the office and you've won, then you've won, and then maybe you have to settle for a few dollars, et cetera, and that's very unfortunate in our type of system.
It is unfortunate.
We've seen some tough words, some I don't know. There's been some rough words out there on both sides between Demaio and Nathan Fletcher. Anything that's really sticking out to you, and are some of these attacks on each other really hurting the candidates? The ones that are making the attacks, I should say.
It certainly can hurt the candidates, but I haven't seen it so far.
Okay.
Because it is such a close race, and these arrows are being shot across, it's not only red hot, it's just white hot right now. The dramatic results, or the dramatic aspect in the last week, is there was a Fletcher commercial that was very strong, and it had some of his supporters repeatedly saying, "Shame on you." Well, what happened was in the first commercial, they talked about Demaio never having served his country. Those were their words. Well, they got such flashback and feedback on that they had to re-edit that commercial and re-air it, and they took out that part about that he didn't serve his country. So on one hand, that's good for the Fletcher campaign. That shows me they're fluid, they're reacting. But on the other hand, I don't see how they didn't realize that for the first commercial. It was very harsh.
Very harsh, and why would they retract that? Because that is a campaign that doesn't retract much of anything. Why would they retract something factual?
Well, of course, they wouldn't use the word retract,
Right.
but they did. Again, it is a re-edited version of the first commercial, and I think it is because you saw, mostly across the blogs, but you saw out there in cyberspace a lot of reactions from people who were even Fletcher supporters. A lot of people did think across the line.
And we do see a new Demaio ad where his voice has been taken off, and there's a narrator over his ad now.
Keep in mind, they're doing, if they have the money, I'm assuming if they have the money, they're doing tracking polls, if not every night, as often as they can. And internally, they're vetting this stuff. So they're reacting on a day-to-day basis.
And it's only going to get more interesting in the coming weeks.
22 days.
22 days, and you said this is where we're going to see those big attacks.
Oh, it's going to be the avalanche from here on in.
Avalanche.
I hope you'll join us at Golden Hall.
I think I might make an appearance.
Election night, but you
You
will.
think?
You think?
All right.
Thanks, John
Dadian,
Dadian.
thank you so
Good
much
to see you
for
both.
coming in.